Welcome to the Spire Director's Commentary Podcast, recorded by Grant Howitt and Chris Taylor. Following a successful Kickstarter campaign, we agreed to record commentary for each chapter of the Spire RPG, a fantasy punk game about insurrection, oppression, and horror, and release it to our backers. We wanted to talk about the decisions that led us to design Spire the way we did and show our working as best as possible. What you are about to listen to is a podcast made up of those files, arranged into blocks an hour or so long. We encourage you to start from episode 1 and move forward from there. So at the end of the religion chapter, we're almost at the end of the book, really.
Yeah.
We've got the games mastery section, and then some other croft. We're not gonna talk about the games mastery section in great detail because it's already we're just offering insight on our insight.
Yeah, no, it's about how to play the game.
I think we've been discussing that a great deal already.
Yeah, it is a very useful section though because it talks about things like tone.
Yeah, and also
is very important to get right in Spire.
And also because Spire can be quite a grim, unpleasant thing to happen, we've tried to put in a lot of means of you making sure everyone's having a good time.
Yeah.
So having saying, "Oh, I don't want to tell a game about this," and giving people capacity and license to use basically safe words.
Yeah.
Is important in a game. If you want to go at it hard, as it were, it's important to have a safe word in role playing and in other things.
And you've got a lot of stuff in here about creating villains.
Yes, that was an interesting one to write because I tend to work in terms of factions rather than big villains. I tend to not define my things before play, but I think in Spire it works really well.
Yeah, and it's nice to have those questions answered because that section literally puts forward questions for you to answer.
Yeah.
So that you've got at least something to be working towards.
Yeah, for sure. Or something to throw away.
Yeah.
But you've got something there.
You've got that end of the line.
We've also got the so that's under the good villain chapter, and so you can stat out a big villain.
Yeah.
My favourite point is what do they look like and what do they want to look like?
Yes.
Because I was really keen to establish villains as wanting things, but not I want absolute power. No, I want to be a bit taller.
Yeah.
I want to be a bit thinner. I want to wear nicer clothes, that sort of thing. I wanted to try and anchor them in understandable desires.
And if you read any of the adventures we published for this, you'll notice that the NPCs have a cut-down version of this.
Yeah, that's the one at the end of the good villains. That's the henchman.
The henchman one.
Lieutenant section.
One.
We use that for our NPCs.
Yeah, just to outline it so that you can see exactly what they're getting at and what they want.
And it was really interesting to do that because we'd come up with these characters and be like, okay, well, this faction's present. We know this faction's here. We know that it's going to have problems with the ministry operating in this district. What's the person who's leading this faction? What's the face we're putting on this? And by why were they chosen? What sets them apart? Who or what do they desire? And who or what do they despise? And from that, it just it's 4 really simple questions, but it let us just give them a lot more character.
Yeah, rather than just being wahahaha villain.
Yeah, and crucially, the more character you give to someone, the more subvertible they become.
Yeah, it's become a little bit of a problem in playtesting.
Oh yeah.
In that because they're so much more characterful, especially with my group, my players like them more.
That's great.
Which is interesting. Is that people are going, but I like the villain.
Well, recruit him then.
Exactly.
Cut his face off. Put his face in your face. Be the villain. Yeah. On the subject of villainy, we come to the end of the chapter, which how evil are the Elfir in your game, and it differs in everyone's game.
Yeah.
Because they can be comedy villains, and if you want to especially for one-shot things, if you want to have them as every Elfir is an absolute bastard, you can feel free to strangle an Elfir in the bath, and you know that you'll be doing a good thing. Or maybe some of them are bad and some of them are good, and maybe the whole sort of durance thing is something which the Elfir are actually trying to stop.
Yeah, could be.
And you can have different sliding things. I personally am not too interested in the idea of sympathetic Elfir. I think you should make them. You should give them human desires behind their inhuman outer shell.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to strangle someone, you want to know what they're scared of.
I tend to make them infinitely sociable.
Mm.
So they're not necessarily nice, but they will talk to a drow.
Super polite.
Yeah, they're super polite. They'll talk to one, but they won't, be in any way upset if a car hit them.
Yeah, and then on the flip side of that, how villainous are the Ministry? Because we leave it fairly vague as to whether what they're doing or not is whether what they're doing is good or not, as it were. But when it's very rare, the fact that you're in the Ministry comes out in a game, and occasionally an NPC will be wink and a nod. I understand this, that you're working for someone else. Our aims are allying. Let's work together for the time being. But it's pretty rare. I certainly haven't told stories about your mum finds out.
Yeah, which is a very interesting thing to do in a game.
What does she do? Because the Ministry ostensibly do bad things. And as far as all the propaganda goes, the Ministry are dangerous lunatics.
Yeah, a lot of drow will just sell you out quite happily.
Yeah, and so that's something we've left up to the GM, I think, in that, and that's more in terms of tone. We've got Shadow Fallout, you can have, and we've got Reputation Fallout.
Yeah. So
we've certainly got mechanics which let you do that and let you represent that, so it doesn't feel like you're screwing over the players. But I think in terms of Shadow just being how well you're hiding your goals, in the sort of fast burn campaigns that I've been running, that's generally the police get wind of what you're doing, the paladins get wind of what you're doing, a rival church gets wind of what you're doing. As opposed to Shadow Fallout in a longer game could be your brother-in-law confronts you.
Yeah.
And that's a different story, and I think they're both valid.
Very much so.
The New Gods.
The first of the appendices.
Appendices.
Good word.
The New Gods were fun to write. I'm not going to lie, they were great.
Yeah.
We like writing gods, we like writing rules, and people paid us a significant amount of money to do both. It's just top notch, brilliant, love it.
And they got some nice art out of it as well.
Yeah, some gorgeous art. We're not going to go through all of them because we would be repeating ourselves a lot.
But one of the interesting things about these gods is that the majority of them are human gods.
Yeah.
They are new gods to Spire. And
yeah, they turned up.
And drow are worshipping them now. They're kind of working their way into the mainstream. These are some of the things you might see on Pilgrim's Walk.
Yeah.
People worshipping them randomly around the place. And even some of them aren't gods.
Yeah, one of them's a conduit.
Yeah, one of them's an eidolon, essentially.
Yeah, one of them is a house that a demon lives in. But we've got things we've got Luxurian, the Duke of Air, is one of my favourites because we had to come up with rules for flight.
Yep.
And that was a challenge because in your Dungeons and Dragons, in your games which have things like feet, that's not too hard to do. But we just had to sort of have you can fly. Yeah. And that was kind of a challenge. But I really like we had the idea that they have to carry around these things called sky shrines, which are big, lumpy. Some of them are wings, and some of them are jetpacks, and some of them are helicopter things. And they shouldn't strictly work, but because of magic, they do.
Yeah.
And they are hugely unreliable.
I think my favourite is a Pash, the Martyr of Whitecross.
Oh, why's that?
For a couple of reasons. One, I love the art.
Mm-hmm.
I really find that wonderful. But also, it's an interesting way of getting humans into a revolution campaign.
Yeah, that's true.
As it's a revolutionary god. It's about standing up to people.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted then to have a human agitator who worshipped a Pash, that would fit really nicely with the Ministry's ideals. You would,
in terms of having a god of revolution, you would be entirely unsurprised at how many people wanted their god to be the god of secrets.
Yes.
That was a common request. So we had to sort of have different flavours of secrets.
Yep. Yeah, we've got Mia, God of Secrets Lost.
And Carabas, who eats secrets. Yeah. And the Masked God, who tells secrets. I the Masked God was a really fun one to write, and it contains my favourite power from all of these, favourite advance from these new gods, which is Little White Lies. So you mark D3 stress, and then a minor lie you tell becomes the truth until the next dawn.
Yeah.
And it loops back into the thing where we wanted to write Spire to surprise the GM.
Yes.
But being able to say, I have a gun, and now you have a gun. Or you look nice, and now they look nice.
Yeah,
and that's...
it does have the most powerful ability in the game in it.
Oh, what the...
Greatest lie.
Once and only once tell a lie, it is no longer a lie.
Yep. There's your
New
wish
campaign,
spell.
Please. Yeah, you get a wish spell.
Yep.
Just kind of fun. I really like writing the Masked God. Also, it was really fun to write these down and then send them off to the backers, and like most every backer we had was like, "This is brilliant. You've done this. I had this idea, and you've taken it and you've made it exist." And that was really, really fun, really satisfying to do that. Also, like we wanted to. We were really careful not to have them as add-on gods. We didn't want them to feel like, that's the thing, because they get like, we weren't sure where to put them. They're all in their own chapter, because we weren't sure where to. Honestly, because again, Adrian Stone refuses to draw anything smaller than a single page. We weren't sure where to put these in the book, and so like we could have divided them up and put them through the bit, but they would have stuck out. I think putting them all in one place means you get all that nice art, like really close to each other. That's gorgeous. But we wanted to try and weave them into the setting.
Yeah.
In as much as like they're new and they've come in, but it's not like they've always been here. If they've always been here, they're quiet. And things like Garrick the Steelbug. The other thing I should mention actually about the human gods is all human gods were people once.
Yes.
We have that down is that every human god in Spire is an ascended mortal, and that's simply because a load of Kickstarter backers asked to look like their gods.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that's informed stuff we've done since this.
Yeah.
When we're looking at the humans and just going, well, all their gods are ascended mortal.
Yeah, so like becoming a god is a technical career path for a human.
Yeah.
as long as you can work out what it needs, like they're all playing unknown armies, as it were. Appendix 2.
Random items and events in Spire.
Oh, we did this over an afternoon, I seem to remember. Like, I think someone mentioned, it'd be nice if we had some random tables, and we just kept going.
Yeah, and I sat down and wrote like 3/4 of them, just because I wanted to, like especially like the plants one.
Yeah.
What is this plant and what does
your
it
mum's
do?
a witch.
Yes, my mother's a witch.
And so Chris understands things about plants, which I do not.
And some of them are strange. Like there's one, what are they singing at church? I asked one of my playtesters who does choral singing, like, oh, what are your favourite choral songs? Like, quickly write those down and then spire them up.
just get inspired.
Oh, clever.
Nice. Like, I really like random tables. I really like having, like, being surprised. And I like rolling on about 2 or 3 at once. Just to have, just so that I don't know what's going to happen, and then the players know that I don't know what's going to happen, and then we can all come together and play that story.
Yeah.
And that's really fun. I really like random magic item tables. I like wandering monster tables if you can write them properly. And these are kind of that. We don't have wandering monsters. I think every fight you have in Spire should tell a story.
Yeah, and one of the big things for me with these.
Hey. No. Oh, sorry. I'll start again. No, that's fine.
Yep.
So the two ones I'm interested in discussing here is one is the Spire Black Sensations table, which has Pulp Fiction about Spire by people in Spire, and I think that was something which I wanted to talk about the fact that, or just sort of allude to the fact that the stuff in the book. The stuff in the occult section, the stuff like the religion sections, that's not common knowledge. That's myths and legends to the people who live in the city. And so to be able to have that as something which they're playful about. She played dice with charnel. Like they're making almost satirical things. They're making a sensationalist works.
Well, yeah, in Hearthstone Horror, you got the mystery of the Viscount, a terror from outside time. Like, the Viscount is a very real threat to Spire, And they think it's a myth that's worth writing a book about. Yeah, but for me, my absolute favourite one is what does the Aelfir have in their pocket, the first one. Because we describe everything else in Spire in broad strokes and larger scale writing. And it keeps it grounded. It's like, this is something they just have in their pockets. So it informs the setting. And it's just so granular and so little that like they've got very slowly melting ice cubes, and that's because they don't like the heat. That's because they have access to Everfrost.
I really like a list of drow names they're trying to remember. That instantly sets up. There's a character there or around that.
Yeah.
To dehumanize the Aelfir. What beautification surgery has this Aelfir undergone? Is the last one.
Yeah.
Which I adore. I also like the idea that they give this beautification surgery to favoured servants. But I wanted every single one to just really squick.
My favourite is subdermal Everfrost.
leading to steaming
breath.
Permanent weeping modification is mine.
Not larynx tuning.
Well, I think that's actually a thing you can get.
Oh, that's terrifying.
I think like you can modify your voice to make it lighter or higher or lower by having your larynx messed with. I believe wrist lengthening. Yeah, I think that was that was us trying to talk about the Aelfir as monsters, horrible monsters.
Yeah,
we've got the Drow glossary,
just nightmares
as well, which has been sticking around for a while. There's very little in there which we don't use in the book.
It was just to sort of piece it out and make it easier to understand, so you could learn some of it and learn the origins of it, so that you can get the tone of the language, so you can make up your own.
Yeah, for sure. But my favourite appendix is Appendix 4.
My most hated appendix is Appendix 4.
So it was Goats of Spire,
yeah,
which I wanted to put in the low society section,
and I wanted a word added.
You wanted Rumoured Goats of Spire, and then you wanted it relegated
to an appendix,
to the joke section.
Yep.
I will say most of them are ridiculous.
They really are.
So a friend of mine said that she wanted to be like she didn't have enough money to back at the god level, but she wanted to be the god of goats. And I was like, goats, that'd be fun. And so I just wrote down as many kinds of goats as I could think of, and got to here. Which is your least favourite?
There's one with like a hexatongue.
That would be the hex tongue.
Yeah.
Oh, that one's pretty normal, man.
I don't like.
I thought you wouldn't like the one, the latchkey fiddler, which picks locks with its horns.
I think that's ridiculous, but I like the grossest one is the hexatongue for me.
Oh, okay. There's the deep goats who have human hands. Deep goats.
Yeah, Grant, deep goats.
What am I doing?
I don't know.
Super vertical.
You wouldn't let me you wouldn't let me take it out. This was the one bit you wouldn't let me take out.
You know what? I'm super happy it's here, and they're rumoured goats. They don't have to be real. Yeah. I just thought it'd be nice to have a bit of levity in the book, because there's a lot of grim.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't realise that Blades in the Dark had goats as well. This was written before I became aware of that.
Yes, it is.
And John Harper can take this appendix out of my cold dead hand. One of them just screams at parties.
Yeah, one of them just screams at parties, Grant. Lowering the tone.
That's a single page. Appendix 5 is now Narcologies, which is hinting at what the human lands are like. Yep. We kind of got the idea that they're sort of built around these buried arcologies. Arcology, I think it actually meant does it mean like self-sustaining city as well as hidden ancient city?
It primarily means a city that can feed and sustain itself in a vacuum, essentially.
Yeah. Which they are, but also they're ancient from the Prokatakos.
Yeah.
And we again named them all after places in Cornwall.
Of course.
And stuck weirdness in them.
Magwan Porth, Templehead, Damned Saltash. It's not called Damned Saltash in Cornwall. It's just Saltash.
It's really bad there. They don't even have a Tesco.
It's just the worst.
It was fun to just to sort of sketch out what the human lands might be like. The Blessed Isle of Whitecross, once a sacred site to many humans, is where they discovered gunpowder, and now they've mined it out, and it's a nightmare full of monsters. That's largely it for the book, Chris. We've got a list of antagonists.
Yep, which is just a random table to help you work out an antagonist if you need to.
I will say, this is how we've written all of our campaigns.
Thanks for giving it away, Grant.
You pick a district, and then you roll on this table.
Yep. That is literally how we've written all of them.
Generally, we roll until we're...
Yes, we don't just go with the first one. We roll until there's an interesting
combination, and then go from there rather than make that happen. What else have we got? We've got suggested media.
Yeah.
Musically, what music? Because you didn't really put forward much music for Spire.
Most of my music for Spire is very, very sad folk music.
Yes.
Even sadder than the folk music I normally listen to.
I've gone for more, some drone.
Yeah.
Light menace.
Born under Club of Gore, primarily.
That's heavy drone, low menace. Yeah. Well, it's menacing and sort of waking up tied to a chair menace rather than being chased through a building menace.
Yeah.
If you listen to if you pick up one thing off our suggested media, I forgot we put Blackadder in there. Of course, it's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend you listen to Born and the Club of Gore, in that it is unlike any music I've ever heard in my life,
and it is absolutely perfect.
I'm going to try and recreate it now. Okay. But for 12 minutes a song,
and it's better than that.
Yeah, they use instruments.
I don't particularly like that style of music, and I really enjoy that album.
Yeah, it's very good music for so little happens in it. It's never going to seem incongruous in a scene, as it were. And then our thanks page, and that's us. So listen, thank you, listener,
for listening all the way through.
Yeah, for getting all the way through.
Skipping to the end.
I doubt they'd skip to the end if they didn't enjoy the first bit.
Yeah, I see them cheating.
Yeah. It's been a fascinating and strange process writing Spire.
For sure.
How have you found it, Chris? Talk to me about it. About the process of doing the thing.
I think for me it's been interesting to try and make a coherent world that wasn't a history textbook.
Steady on the coherent bit there, mate.
No, but it is coherent. It's got its own internal logic.
That's true, yeah.
It is coherent within itself.
Yeah.
And it's not a history textbook. We do not delineate the past 300 years of history.
No.
We don't feel that's important. We tell you what's happened because if it's important.
Mm-hmm.
And we bind that into what's happening right now. Right now, has something happening. Let's go. Come on, keep going.
Yeah, and that's been a real challenge.
Yeah,
there's always the desire to just sit down and write what happened and sit down and write who did what. It's it doesn't matter who did what unless they're still doing it. For me, it's been a real challenge in terms of bravery. I think in putting forward my ideas, in saying no, I'm excited about this. I'm ready for it, and that's been very strange to do. I've been doing my best to try and stay at arm's length from treating my work seriously for the first 5 or so years of my career, and now I think I'm starting to grow up a little bit and understand that I'm allowed to take this seriously, and I'm really proud of what we produced. I think we've produced something really beautiful here, and quite I think it's telling stories which games are very rare in role playing games. Stories of revolution. The protest in London, I felt really disheartened with the whole thing. I felt really ground down. It's just that everything... I started to believe that maybe people weren't intrinsically good. Maybe there is a in the culture that I lived in, having the opportunity to just play at being able to affect things,
and to fix a problem,
and to be able to push a guy off the side of a several mile high tall building and have that fix a problem,
and have that be satisfying and legal.
Yeah, yes,
for the better way of putting
it's very cathartic, and I think that hopefully we've given people an avenue to do that. If you we're interested to hear what you say, what you think about Spire, and more importantly, what your games do. What sort of characters, what sort of stories you tell. We've got a Spire Discord, which if you're listening to this, my God, I'm sure you're on the Discord. But odds are high. But if not, ping us a message and we'll sort you out with an invite. But also we're on Reddit, Reddit/Spire RPG. And if you want to talk about stuff there, then hopefully by the time we release the book, which we've not done yet at the time of recording. There should be a bit more chat on there, and if there's not, chat on there, please. We're lonely. As far as anything else goes, watch this space. There'll be more Spire.
There will be. 100%.
If you're interested in reading more Spire, if you're interested in learning more about it, then play it, talk about it, tell your friends about it. The more we sell, the more notoriety and momentum that this gains, the more financially viable it becomes to write and release more outside of a Kickstarter model. And yes, please, tell everyone. That was the end of the book, and also the end of the director's commentary. However, we had 4 interviews with people who worked on the book with us: Adrian Stone, Mary Hamilton, Chad Walker, and Tim Wilkinson-Lewis, and we decided to put these into the podcast too. So, first up, Adrian Stone. We have brought you onto this director's commentary to talk about your art in some way. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Adrian? You can lie.
We can lie. Just perpetually frustrated artist, I think. Frustrated by every element of it. Equally frustrates and fascinates me.
Brilliant. Okay. What's the most frustrating thing about art, do you think?
Not being Mike Mignola is up there.
That must be a perpetual
I'll be honest
problem.
with you. I've drawn like 3 things, and I struggle with that too because I really wish I was. Wouldn't that be great?
It's just the amazing thing I always think about it with my artwork is it never comes out how I planned it. It's like something intangible happens in that kind of process between getting it from your imagination to a finished piece. It's never how you imagined it. I don't know if that's the same with any kind of creative process with writing or, I don't know, building houses or anything.
I think in terms of writing, Chris and I barely had any idea what Spire was at the start, and we're still not entirely sure.
Yeah, we just keep doing it until it feels right.
We rewrote it 17 times, I think, throughout the course of production, which was a terrible idea. We should have done it about 5 times, but we chose 17. But I think certainly, and also because you work quite quickly, don't you?
I do, yeah. But the actual process is quite quick. Getting the sort of the right feel maybe takes a bit of time. It's sort of maybe a kind of maybe like an athlete trainer for a sort of sprint. The actual process is quite quick, but getting to that point maybe takes a bit of time.
Yeah, for sure, that makes sense. And
also, based on the Usain Bolt of graphic art, that's what I'm trying to say. Oh no, that's Mike Mignola again.
Oh yeah, they'll do it. But I mean, when we give you,
hey, we get Mike on the show.
When we give you changes, like sometimes they'll be done that day. So
I think it's
incredibly fast.
Because the changes aren't huge, and if you're working in Photoshop and you're very sort of diligent with your Photoshop skills and everything's clearly labelled and all the layers are kind of there, it doesn't really take much time to make those changes if they're sort of not wholesale changes.
So,
giving away my trade secrets here. I shouldn't tell you.
is it Photoshop that you use all the time, or is there other programs you use?
Photoshop mainly. I mean, if it's coming down to logos and things, you probably use more of a vector-based program like Illustrator. But Photoshop is so multifunctional. It's you can do anything with it really, and there's a million ways of getting to the same kind of outcome. Right. So it suits any kind of artist, I think. I mean, there's a lot of my sort of artist friends and colleagues use a lot of different things, but they all come back to Photoshop, or they all started on Photoshop, or they all tidy up with Photoshop. It's always there, you know.
It's very much the pen.
Yeah.
of computer programs. I suppose the pencil. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If the pen kept getting sort of 6-month arbitrary updates to the pen, which made it slightly different to use every time. Yeah, it would be like the pen.
If you took the cap off a pen and then it expanded like those fingers in Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
Into like 12 different pens.
Yeah, let's try putting the nib on the side. Yeah, that would be more intuitive. But yeah, Photoshop for sure. I mean, maybe kind of 10%. Sort of a pencil on paper, just maybe to work some stuff out, and then the rest of it's just Photoshop. But like I said, it just makes everything not easier, but a lot sort of quicker and a lot cleaner, less mess.
So looking at the what's the word? The swathe bucket of illustrations you have produced for Spire. There seems to be some themes going across the work. There's definitely a theme of angular. Looks quite sharp, quite abstract decisions. Can you talk a little bit about how you tried to reflect the setting which we communicated to you through your work?
Well, you gave the sort of Pinterest pages you gave me in terms of the architecture. Most of that was pretty angular. It's all kind of sort of brutalist architecture. So there's a lot of sort of chunks of building just stuck in the middle of nowhere, and kind of all the kind of angles were quite sharp. There's a few of them, but I sort of struggled to get my head around. There was a couple of the silos that had been really amazing, sort of carved out in a strange way, so it almost looked like a hive, or because you wanted some hive elements in there, didn't you? That was quite difficult to accomplish. But I think maybe the angles are just what I'm drawn to. It's the same, like I said, with a lot of the artists that I like. Say, Modigliani is one of my sort of favourite sort of classical artists, and he's lots to do with sort of angularity. It's not necessarily abstract, but it's certainly more expressive too.
Yes, certainly. Yes, sorry, abstract was the wrong word. I suppose I think I'm using it in terms of like role-playing game design, where you'd abstract out fine details into something more fluid. But yes, certainly. What was the word you used? Impression? What was the word?
I can't remember now.
Okay, great. Well done, everyone.
It's more less impressionism, more like expressionism.
Expressionism, yes, that's the one.
So, if you're looking at sort of German expressionist films like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, all the backgrounds in there, there's no sort of curved lines in any of the buildings or any of the sort of the backdrops. They're all kind of these horribly sort of clashing angles that I always like the look of. And if you kind of draw the human face or a sort of humanoid face out of angles, it's immediately puts you on edge. It's immediately otherworldly. It's immediately threatening or kind of mysterious. Or I mean, there's no comfort in angles, is there? It's all knives and dark corners.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the nice things that you managed to get across, that kind of unfamiliarity and the, as you say, the threatening nature of a lot of the things. Because in many cases we just said there's a guy on a rooftop.
Go for it.
Flags around, and you somehow come out with this wonderfully threatening picture.
I think the thing which most impressed me, because Adrian worked on Unbound for us as well, and we'd say to Adrian, "Oh, can you maybe do this for us?" And he'd go away and not do what we asked him, but do a much better thing, which somehow illustrated our idea better. And so we were really excited to work with him on Spire, because we could give him the briefest possible instructions, and even if he ignored them, he'd get it right.
But that's very kind of you. But that's the kind of, I think that's more your kind of letting me have a bit more of a free reign with it. I mean,
Yeah, I suppose so.
You're hiring someone, an artist or a sort of creative type, to create for you in certain aspects, because otherwise I mean, I've worked with clients where they just micromanage every element of it until you're not doing anything creative in there other than kind of slavishly, visually representing their vision. And I think in terms of, you want something to be exciting and sort of generate that kind of emotion, it needs to be a bit more collaborative. You've obviously the creative guys in terms of the world build, and then you need to give your sort of visual creatives license to kind of create their side of it, if it makes sense, and then that it makes it more interesting that way, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. We've been chatting about this on the commentary, in that, so because Chris and I are collaborating on this as a partnership, there's no one canonical view of Spire. And so your view of Spire comes in, adds a different layer to the canon, and Tim's map adds a different layer to the canon. And so, like, say for example, your Spire has flying drones in it, and we didn't think about flying drones. We didn't think that they'd be a thing, but they are in there now, according to you. And that makes the city uncertain and unclear, and I quite like that it's reached by agreement.
Well, I think that's probably that's. I mean, I just kind of, when there's certain kind of, not necessarily tropes, but kind of bookmarks from science fiction and things that you kind of always go back to, or you lean towards, or you're attracted to. And for me, it's kind of that. It's the sort of Blade Runner, Metropolis kind of, or sort of authoritarian, totalitarian element of sci-fi that I'm quite attracted to. And there are elements of that, obviously, in the Spire.
Yeah.
But it's good that you're able to kind of take on board other people's ideas, and I'm assuming that's what you kind of encourage the players of the game to do, is to add their own sort of individual elements to
100%. The advancement mechanic in Spire is to change the city in some way. So it isn't the start at the end of a campaign as it is when you open the book.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a kind of because we worked together on Unbound. That's the sort of thing you kind of gave me license to do. A lot of my own kind of ideas, and it's good that you've taken those. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have been offended if you were like, "No, take that drone out. That's not what we're looking for." That's fine.
But it's the sort of thing, like, where if I heard from someone who'd run a campaign that they'd found this weird hovering drone, and I'd be like, oh wow, what a great idea! Like someone on our Discord was chatting about putting in the rivers down by the North Docks. In their campaigin they filled it full of giant carp that the drow ride, and like, yeah, sure, why not? Giant carp sounds good. And like it's like Chris and I have we've very much come from the Games Mastery school of saying yes and working out why, rather than saying no and not letting anything forward.
Yeah, it's that kind of. It's like a melting pot of ideas. It's probably why sort of American TV is a lot better than British TV, because they have a whole room of writers throwing ideas in, rather than one man sort of slowly going mad by himself, or one woman going mad by themselves for 6 months. You know, not creativity by committee, because that's the worst, but more of a big kind of team.
It's what's the word? It's a jam session.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all coming together and doing the things we're good at and making something out of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, you were talking about Blade Runner. What other sort of inspiration did you draw from for Spire?
Well, obviously I know that Grant's into his sort of gothic high fashion, so there was a lot of that on the Pinterest and the sort of reference material you sent to me. So there's that was a good starting point. I mean, I'm not sure if I captured a lot of it to that same standard or same style.
I think I want to have a drink with almost every character you've drawn, even the monsters. So you think you've done fairly well on that front.
A lot of them, I was trying to get. I mean, the way you sort of set out these sort of gods and archetypes and things. To me, it did feel quite tarot card-esque. So I tried to get some. I mean, especially with the kind of living hive, I wanted to go for a sort of Catholic iconography, sort of tarot card kind of thing. And I wanted to try and get that in some of the other elements. I mean, maybe not so obvious as that, but there were. I'm trying to think now. I mean, yeah, I think probably sort of tarot cards and that kind of. It's difficult to explain, but yeah, tarot cards definitely. Catholic iconography. Some of those sort of like. But fashion definitely for sure.
Yeah, I put a lot of pictures of Rihanna and Beyonce up.
There were quite a few.
My fashion icons.
Yeah, the whole kind of sort of illuminated halos was really sort of prevalent in the Pinterest stuff you sent me, which is quite nice.
To be honest with you, I'd not noticed that. Did you notice that, Chris?
I didn't know.
There was a lot of headdresses that kind of had that halo element, that sort of that kind of you see sort of Catholic depictions of Madonna and Child, and there's always like this sort of glowing halo behind their heads.
Yeah.
Which I thought
I can see now looking at the art that's in about half the drawings.
Yeah.
I can see that happening. Yeah. It's been lovely working with you again, and it's been fantastic to have someone realise our vision and just make it work, and honestly just shift so many copies, Adrian. Just do so well on Kickstarter.
Well, it's good that you get to work with people where they'll say, go come up, see what can you come up with, do what you want to do basically, and then you come back and say, yeah, that's brilliant, because there's so many times you get clients or you work with people say, yeah, just do what you want, and then you come back and they're like, yeah, anything but not that.
Do what I want.
Yeah,
well,
we want you to do anything you want, but not that specifically. So,
that's something we're very keen to capture, like, because we've worked with you before. We were very, very specific when we were doing the briefs of no more than a paragraph.
Yeah.
We just say what needs to be in the picture, and then Adrian can just do art magic at it.
And I think like the way in which we talk, the way in which we deal with our freelancers, and the way in which we deal with people who are writing on Spire or creating art for anything we've done, is that we'll get in touch with them and say, can you create something which makes you excited? And then send it over, and we'll try and change it as little as possible. Like if you put something hugely problematic in there, then we'll have a word with you. But generally, that means you get better work people are enthused about, and they deliver it on time, which is really nice. and it means that you get you don't quite have the same sort of authoritative vision that you might have from a book which had a much more strictly controlled team. But honestly, I think we're going to end up with something more interesting and more vibrant. And if it's slightly contradictory, that puts you in the right headspace to start playing the game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the vibe I always got from all kind of role-playing games when I was a kid, even the sort of the classic ones. I mean, it was always meant to be a sort of jumping off point to whatever you wanted to come up with.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's the same with I think with all the kind of the great sort of sci-fi and fantasy that I've read as a kid, or sort of part of the artists or the writers or whatever, always their main job was to kind of inspire the next sort of generation, or kind of inspire imaginations in other people, which I think is really important when it comes to this kind of genre of art and this kind of game.
There's one school of thought whereas like a role-playing game is only as good as it is playable with a group. And there's another school of thought which is like, well, actually, the physical book which exists is a nice thing. The inspiration they can give is a nice thing. So if there's nice art, if there's nice concepts, if there's an interesting world you can explore, there's a great deal which you can get out of it without ever playing the game. And I think, whether or not you want to back me up on this one, Chris, I think that's something which we went for with Spire.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's designed to be a fun read and a nice look and something which you can get excited about and imagine what you'll do, rather than us telling the story of what happened 600 years ago, because no one gives a shit about what happened 600 years ago.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's the same with, say, like car enthusiasts. I mean, they love the cars, but I'm sure they love to sort of modify them just as much. And I think that's probably the same with like a lot of like game players, a lot of board game players or role players and that kind of thing. They want to get under the bonnet of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense as well, because unlike a computer game, all the rules are explained and there for you to see, so it's much easier to start hacking and modifying it. I think that's going to do it for us, guys. Chris, do you have any more questions?
No, I think that's perfect.
All right, well, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Adrian. Thank you for all the drawings.
Lovely pictures.
Lovely pictures, what you did for us. And we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Listener, goodbye. Adrian, goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.
The Spire Director's Commentary podcast is a companion to the Spire RPG and features Grant Howitt and Chris Taylor. The music is by Arokia, hosted on freesound.org and used under the Creative Commons license. To learn more about Spire, explore related products or buy your own copy, go to rowanrookanddeckard.com.